Today, my presentation is, of course, day 45 of the Tao of Joy Every Day, and that chapter is entitled The Essence, and the subtitle I've chosen is The Tao of Love. And the reason for that is because ultimately the essence of everything, the real reason for being, is love. It's the most important thing we have, and it's within each of us, and always has been, and in my belief always will be. But before we do that, I'm going to do a quick review of day 44, which was internal and external reflections. And we talked last week about how people that are highly skilled in the Tao cultivate at a very high level, and they achieve success over time by regularly turning inward and giving an honest examination of themselves. And they recognize their faults, but unlike many people, they don't attach to those faults. They remain detached, so they can be objective about their own flaws. And when we can succeed in being objective, we're able to make the corrections without feelings and emotion getting in the way. And largely that's because people who cultivate at a high level, they know they spend so much time letting their emotions settle that it becomes automatic to them. And so they're able to see any things that need to be corrected, and then are able to take action and do that very gently, very subtly, without ever having to inflict harm, because they've cultivated the process so well that they slowly address their flaws, and those flaws no longer become a problem. And obviously that's what we'd all like to have. Speaking for myself, I know I have a long way to go, but the process of doing it can bring joy as well, even if we're not at the level we want to be yet. And of course, we talked about remembering that after the self-examination is completed, it's a good practice then to take action by accepting responsibility for our behavior, for our faults that may have caused friction and tension with others. And so, if possible, we can take action to correct the problems that we've created. And then that way we also learn to avoid those same mistakes in our future encounters with people. And at the end, what we said, basically, we must not get stuck in the easy trap of having blind spots to our own faults. And we can't just think because our intentions were good that that's enough. Having good intentions is part of it, but we also have to bring those good intentions to fruition in a careful, gentle way that doesn't interfere or avoid the natural processes and sequences of things, doing things at the right time. As you self-reflect, that awareness becomes sharper, and you're able to see what to do and when to do it. You're able to see ahead of time the things to avoid. You know yourself well enough to know what you should be careful of, what you should be gentle with. And of course, having a blind spot is very similar to the term that we hear often now, cognitive dissonance. And that cognitive dissonance is sort of getting married to a position, thinking that you're fine, your intentions are good, you do no harm, I don't do any harm, so anyone who sees harm isn't seeing it right. Being locked in and not open to the possibility that the failure could be from you. And of course, people who cultivate at a high level don't do that. that they're willing to do a self-examination, not to beat themselves up, but to improve slowly and steadily. And that slow improvement, over time, the sum of those slow adjustments can have a big impact on your relationships with others. And naturally, the positivity that you're cultivating within will reflect out. And then that positivity comes back to you. And of course, the key is to cultivate that awareness of reflection, so that basically what we want to do is reflect our truest, best self, which we've always had. Even if reincarnation is true and we had other bodies, our true self was in them as well. There was always the potential to reflect our true selves out to the world. And when we do that, we can connect with others, and their true self reflects back. And then you have harmony and peace and balance when that happens. And that's really leads well into today's talk, which is the essence of existence, really. Why are we here? And of course, you could have many answers to that. I'm going to advance the slide now. There can be many reasons for being here that you can think about. But if you think about the activities that bring you the most joy, it always has to do with love. And we even say it in our language. You might say to someone, hey, did you see that movie last night that was on TV or something? And they might say, yeah, I really loved it. And of course, when we have connections with others, our parents, our siblings, our spouses, our children, our friends, okay. Sorry, I was just checking the chat there, just making sure the volume is okay. But those connections we have with others are the whole reason for living. They're what makes living worthwhile, and it's the main reason. It's easy to get lost sometimes in minutia of life, the things that we have to do: getting up, going to work, eating, sleeping, hopefully exercising. Something I need to work on. It's easy to get lost in the mundane details and to forget that we need to bring love to all those daily activities too, because that's what makes the process enjoyable. It's where the happiness is, really. And so getting more into the bullet point I have up here, we all recognize that there is an essence that exists within the physical universe, and that we all live our day-to-day lives within that same universe. But through faith, we also know that this essence goes beyond just the physical world of space and time. Obviously, man, rather miraculously, I might say, has figured out so many things about the universe he sits in. Here we are on this little planet, and yet we figured out that the universe is, I believe, about 14 billion years old, which seems like a real long time. I mean, if you really think about how long that is, it's hard to wrap your head around it. But the reality is the Tao is beyond that even. The Tao is infinite. It always was, and it always will be. And for me, and this is a matter of faith too, but I believe that even if this universe ceases to have life in it, the one we sit in, I truly believe that there are other universes, and all of them spring from the Tao. And while I can't speak to the details of how it all works, I believe that there's a part of us that's eternal, And it's in moments of quietude that we can often sense it and feel it. And when we sense it and when we feel it, when we feel the connection, that's when we experience joy and we realize that life is worth living. Even in times when it was hard, those hard times were okay because we got to a place where even in those hard times, we helped each other, we shared with each other, we connected with each other, we listened to each other. Essentially, we loved each other. And when we do that, even when we face challenges and difficulties, it's all worthwhile. And the good news is we don't have to create the essence. It's already there. It's in everyone from the moment we were born. And so, as human beings, of course, we love to describe and label things with words. And let's face it, this is really helpful sometimes when you're trying to gain understanding about the physical world. You know, sometimes just being able to identify what's what is an important step. And then you sort of start asking deeper questions like, well, beyond what we call this thing, how does it work? And there's physicality, of course, involved in that. And we use words to express and understand what we're saying. And that's wonderful. But of course, in addition to the physical essence that exists within the universe itself, there's also a spiritual essence, you know, including intangible qualities that don't lend themselves readily to simple descriptions or any descriptions, really. There's qualities of the universe that we can experience if we cultivate a awareness and understanding. Or I should say awareness sort of leads to understanding. And we can feel and sense that everything in the physical world has arisen from this state of non-form. So we see the physical in form, but it came from the same essence. And words can't describe it very easily. And so, of course, you know, as you know from the first chapter of the Tao Te Ching, we call it Tao. But I know most of the people, if not all of us, and connected to this meeting have been cultivating for a while. And so we acknowledge that the word is simply kind of a placeholder for something that cannot really be described. Because when we talk about the Tao, we are essentially talking about the essence, the ultimate underlying force behind everything. And of course, this essence is quite simply the way of existence, or to put it in another phrase, it's the way of reality, the true nature of reality. And it has its own essence. And of course, the best way to experience this essence is through connection. In order to understand anything or anyone, it is necessary to connect to it or to them. I always, when I started out doing these talks a little over a year and a half ago or so, I wanted to try to give practical advice on how to walk the path as much as being able to share things that have worked for me. And I know that the key thing, there's two key things to connection with others. One is to listen, and the other is to do your best, not only to listen, but to make sure that the person that's speaking knows that you heard them. And often this last step gets overlooked. Sometimes we overlook it with those we love most because we take them for granted. Sometimes we overlook it when we meet new people because we want them to know about us without bothering to find out about them. And sometimes the ego is what's driving that, and we have to recognize that. But in the end, when you connect with someone and you share moments with them, and they know that you've heard them, and you know that they've heard you. Your two true selves are reflecting back at one another, and the connection is wonderful. And I'm not just speaking about love in terms of a romantic connection, but all love. Anytime you connect to another human being, it doesn't have to have a romantic aspect. It can. But anytime you make a connection with another person and you've heard them and you were able to let them know that you heard them and they hear you and let you know that they hear you, that connection, it's their true selves talking about your true self. And, ultimately, when it comes right down to it, anything we encounter in the realm of space and time here on our little corner of Earth, in this giant universe where the stuff we understand really only constitutes 4% of the universe. But even inanimate objects have an energy associated with them that can be observed because of things like Brownian motion. If you've ever had the chance to look at something like toothpaste with crystals in it under a microscope, you'll see if the light catches it the right way, the crystals will jiggle. And of course, they're inanimate. There's nothing organic about those. And yet they have this motion to them. So there's an energy that exists in things. Even a rock has sort of a frequency of motion, a really low one as it sits on the ground, but it still has a frequency. And so that if there's an energy in inanimate things, of course there's an energy within us too. And that energy is what drives us. It's the power. And of course, it comes from the Tao itself, just like everything does. And but our most treasured connections, of course, as human beings, are with our fellow sentient beings. Think of how wonderful it is to spend time with someone you love. When you care for another person, you develop a connection with them. You are experiencing the essence of love. You're connecting to that person's highest and best self, which is also your highest and best self. And that connection really does, if you think about it, it reinforces the idea of oneness. And there's a joy that comes from that. And I'm not saying that you can't love the things you do as well. That's fine. You can think of things that on the surface don't seem that significant. I mentioned a few weeks ago about how I love to do jigsaw puzzles. And one of the reasons I like it is because I get lost in the process in a way, or maybe lost isn't the word, but I get wrapped into the process in a deep way, and it relaxes me, and I derive joy from it. It helps calm me, it helps relax me, and it helps me connect to the inner essence of the Tao. And when we do that, first within ourselves, it makes the connections to others in our lives richer and deeper. It really does truly make life worth living when we can connect to that essence. So I'm going to go ahead and start to sum it up now. So as I said, there is an essence within both the physical and spiritual realms, and these same essences exist within each of us as well. And words can't accurately describe them, and some people refer to it as a God, that they like to personalize it. That brings comfort and helps them connect to it. And that's fine. It doesn't matter how people connect to it. We all relate to it in different ways. There's 7 billion people on this planet. There's probably 7 billion different ways to relate to it, in a way. In a way, each of us is unique, and yet at the same time, the connection experience with each other is eternal, and it makes existence and reality worth living. So the sacred part of ourselves, the true self or the soul, if you wish, whatever name we choose to give it, is made of these same essences, and it also is eternal. Yes, we're going to physically die one day, but the sacred part of us goes on forever, and to me, we'll be back. Not necessarily on Earth, maybe in a different realm, but wherever we end up coming back, if we do indeed come back, and I, as a matter of faith, I believe we will, our true self will always come with us. And when we depart that life as well, our true self will return to what we came from. And in a way, to me, that might be what I call eternal life. And of course, being that I'm inside, my true self is inside of a body that's in time and space, I'm limited in the sense that I can't just transfer myself out of the physical world. We have to remain in the physical world until our time comes. But at the same time, there's always connection to that essence that gave rise to this physical world we live in. And it's in moments of quiet reflection. And you don't have to sit and reflect. You can be doing activities, taking a walk, being out in nature, spending time with people, and you can still connect to that essence. And of course, the best way to experience these essences, as I said, is to connect with what and who we love. Love is what drives our existence. It's the reason we are here. And of course, love is the greatest human experience. I mean, when love is manifested, it allows us to be kind and understanding. There's those moments where it allows us to be compassionate. It allows us to be generous. In those moments, we're expressing the essence of our best and true selves. And if you take away love, life is scarcely worth living. But the good news is, fortunately, and I believe this truly as a matter of faith, it's impossible to remove love completely. I think even people who get very far off the path of life, the way of life, the way of love and goodness, even people who get far off, there's always a way for them to get back. Because the true self is still eternal. And even if they don't make it back to the path in this life, I truly believe that their story's not over. And that one day we'll all be on the right path together, connected. And that will be a joyous, joyous event. And of course, even people who may seem to be totally lost, remember that they have a best self within them. And the connections are always available to anyone who wants to use them. Ultimately, love can never be destroyed because it is the very expression of existence itself. And in a way, if you think about it, well, whether you want to use hate or fear as the opposite for love, if you really think about it, it's not a fair fight, is it? Recently, Derek was talking about creation and destruction, and he brought out an important point that you could spend a lot of time creating something beautiful, and someone could destroy it rather quickly. But the thing about love is, compared to hate or fear or whatever polar opposite we want to give it, those things are no match for love, really. Hatred and fear are no match for love. And think about it. I mean, how do we feel when we experience hate and fear? It's negative. It's awful. It's not pleasant. Anger and all those negative emotions. Try to stay angry next time you find yourself getting angry, and watch how tired you get, how hurt you start to feel. But when you let go, compare that to the feeling you feel when you know you're being loved by someone, or the feeling you get when you know you're loving someone the way they need to be loved. Which would we choose? Which feeling would we rather experience? Well, let's be honest, it's a pretty easy answer. So in the words of the late great John Lennon, love is the answer. And you know that for sure. And we all know it. We know it intuitively. No one has to be convinced to choose love over fear and hatred. So, as always, I want to put up my invitation slide. If you've learned from the Tao teachings, perhaps you'll be open to sharing what you've learned with others. And you can present in any way you want to as many people as you want. Just being there, present for other people, allows you to experience the love of existence. And sharing those insights will not only help the person you love, but it'll help you as well. And so, as always, I'll finish up with a book recommendation, The Tao of Joy Every Day, a great book to use daily to help one study and learn the Tao teachings and put them into action. So there it was, day 45, The Tao of Love. I want to thank all of you for giving me the opportunity to speak this morning. I hope I said something that was helpful or useful, and I hope you all have a wonderful Sunday.
Thank you so much, Alex. And both Tim and Suzanne join me in thanking you as well. This topic hits close to the heart. And, you know, I always like to ask people to visualize the transformation of water and use that as a way to access an understanding of love. So we know that if we have a chunk of ice and, you know, if we warm it up, which to physicists means that we give it more energy, so the water molecules in the ice will begin to speed up. It will melt and turn into water. And if we give it even more energy, heat it up even more, giving its molecules even more energy to go faster, then water will evaporate into steam. Then we realize that the reverse is also possible, that as the molecules slow down, steam becomes water, and as it slows down further, it freezes into ice. Then I like to use that to ask people to visualize. Suppose love can be seen as sort of a metaphysical steam, if you will, in a gaseous state. And as a gaseous state, it's formless. You can't touch it. It's a high energy level. But as the metaphysical energy of the love molecule slow down, imagine that just like water molecules in steam slowing down enough, steam becomes water. So that metaphysical steam of love becomes the metaphysical liquid of love in liquid form. And that's, I would suggest, that's the flow or the flowing love that we've all felt. The moment in love when you sensed, when you felt that love is flowing between two people, or even more than that, the time when there's harmony among people and everyone can feel this mutual affection flowing back and forth. So yeah, we've all felt it. When this flowing love slows down even more, imagine that it goes from a metaphysical liquid into solid form, like ice taking shape. Except that in the case of love, the form it takes when it solidifies is you. So literally, human beings are made of, shaped from, consisting of this metaphysical energy of love. And how can we know that? Well, as you point out, Alex, we can never be without it. Indeed, when we talk about fear, when we talk about things that are the energy opposites, I think about how the greatest fear for many people is the fear of death. And what I have found in my life is that the one thing powerful enough to conquer that fear is love. So whenever I feel afraid of death, of mortality, that's what I think about. I think about love. I think about the people I love and the people who love me. I feel the gratitude that the number of people I love and the people who love me is increasing as I continue on in this world. And before you know it, the fear of death is kept at bay. So I cannot emphasize the importance of this. Thank you very much, Alex, for bringing this great topic to everyone's attention. And now I think